So now we're going to talk more in depth about the JB290 Caregiver Information Form. This is one of the most important tools caregivers can have to communicate with the court. The 290 Caregiver Information Form is a simple, user-friendly form. It helps you organize detailed information about the child. It helps you to communicate and build a relationship with the court. The overall goal, again, is to enable the judge to make informed decisions about the child and reach the best outcome regarding the disposition of the child. And the law does require the court to review and consider the 290. Caregivers with foster family agencies are allowed and encouraged to independently submit their 290 to the court, in addition to any report submitted by their FFA. So even if your FFA is filing a 290, we always recommend the caregiver to file a separate one as well. Just a quick note that there are instructions that encourage confidential resource parents to give the form to the social worker for filing. We encourage you to always file your own paperwork. It allows you to keep control over what information gets to the court, and allows you to maintain better records. There are other ways to protect your information, like using your initials or writing resource parent instead of your actual name, and or filing the JV 287 confidentiality form to attempt to keep contact information private. I also just want to comment on one other question we often get a lot. People will say, hey, I filed the 290 for our last hearing. Am I allowed to file it again? The answer is yes, absolutely. Not only can you, you should be filing the 290 consistently prior to every review hearing in the case, including continued hearings starting at the 6-month review. We encourage all caregivers to file this form for each review hearing with updated information, because even if the information is consistent, status quo, it is still new information because it covers dates in between hearings that have not yet been reported on. Down the road, if you need to solicit assistance from the juvenile court regarding the child in your care, your 290 will help the judge track your participation in review hearings. It will give a snapshot of the quality and care being provided, and it can also provide an important baseline for the child. The social worker must include a copy of this form with the summary of his or her recommendations to the caregiver and in the caregiver's primary language when available. For people who do receive the form in another language, it's really important to understand that anything you submit that you file with the court needs to be on the English language form with responses written in English. Along with the 290, the county needs to provide the 290 information instructions. The Judicial Council created this 290 instruction sheet, providing detailed instructions for filling out and filing the 290. This is where it suggests that you can give your form to the caregiver to, to the social worker to file on your behalf. Again, we would encourage you to file your own paperwork directly with the court. And we're going to take you through this form by each item line because it should be the most used form by caregivers. And aside from the 290 information form, there's really little instruction on what to include on this otherwise pretty user-friendly form. So we'll start with the top section of the 290, which the caregiver is expected to complete. And if you're going to be taking notes during any part of this training, this 290 section is really where you want to do so. Completing the caption, there are boxes at the top of the page 1 asking for the court name, mailing address. You can write the name of the county where the court is located and the street and mailing address of the court. If you don't know the name and address of the court, you can look at your 280 notice of court hearing, or you can Google it. For branch name, you can write in juvenile. For the child's name section, you'll write the child's first and last name, as well as the hearing date and the time where indicated. And if you don't have that information, you can ask the social worker because, again, it should have been provided to you on the JV 280 notice of hearing. Here's an example here using Alameda County as the example. So that part's pretty self-explanatory, but we do understand that under the stress, high stakes, emotional nature of these cases, people can really second guess themselves. So we provide this as a guide. You do need to provide the case number. It should also be on the notice of hearing that you receive in the mail. If you don't have the case number, ask the child's social worker or attorney for it. If the case involves siblings, there may be one case number for each child. Be sure to use a separate 290 form and write in the correct number for each individual child. On page 1, you're going to complete information about the child and about yourself. For question 1, you'll input the child's first and last names, date of birth and age. Resource parents, relative caregivers, and other individuals caring for the child should complete question 2. Include your name, what type of caregiver you are, and how many years or months the child has lived in your home. Caregivers skip question 3. This is for FFAs and for facilities only if they are completing this form. Question 4 is where you're going to start providing detailed information about the child. The form will prompt you for the type of information the court wants to know. It's important to answer the question asked. This is another reason we suggest doing the 280 versus a letter, which tends to veer from the information the court needs to make its decisions about the child. So as you can see on the slide, or hopefully you've seen the form, number 4 wants to know about the child's medical, dental, and general physical and emotional health. The thing I want to note here is you should include any information you have on these topics. It does not have to be problems or concerns, though those should be highlighted and in most cases be how you start out this section. People also tend to skip the dental health. You need to note the information about each item noted on the form. And it can be as simple as their last dental visit was on such and such date. The dentist reported that child is in good dental health, or child has this many cavities. Next appointment is on such and such date. Child will be receiving XYZ procedure. It doesn't have to be a lot of information if it's not necessarily problematic, but you do need to answer the questions asked. For item 5, you're going to provide information on the child's status at school, such as the child's grade level, public or non-public school, how the child's doing in school, outcomes of testing or school conferences. If the child's not school age, you should still complete this section. You can note that the child's not school age yet, but that you engage in various age-appropriate activities to promote and support development and learning, and any lessons or group activities that the child attends. For question 6, you'll indicate whether the child is a special education student, and if so, the date of their IEP or individualized education plan. Number 7 is a really important item. Here, you're going to provide information on how the child is adjusting to your home. This information will include behavior at home, how the child interacts with other family members, how the child expresses feelings and needs, the child's eating and sleeping patterns. And I think I would say that in my experience, I see that people struggle with this section the most and often default to writing a few statements asserting that the child is bonded, attached, and loved by the family. It would be better to describe the details so that the reader, in this case the judge, can come to these conclusions based on the information you provide. How the child interacts in the home environment. Do they share a room? Do they have their own room? Do they know which room is theirs? Does the child refer to the home as home? Example, when are we going to go back home? Can a friend come to our house? Does the child refer to certain rooms as mom's room, sister's room? Do they show ownership? Are there certain spaces in the home that have the child's toys or like a bookshelf that are accessible to the child? Any things like this that would allow the reader to imagine how the child has adjusted to the home, how they navigate the home, and how they perceive where they're living at this time. And then for number 8, you're going to provide information on how the child is getting along with others, including peer relationships, relationships with teachers, and other adults outside of the family. The common thing I see here is child gets along well with others, or child loves the biological children in the home. It's more helpful to describe these specific interactions in detail, kind of how the children react to each other, For example, does the child light up when older foster brother comes home from school, or run for a hug, or bring a book to the foster sibling to be read to them? Is the child shy? Do they kind of like observe play, or do the child try to engage and interact in play? Is the child learning to share? Do they struggle with learning to share? And if there are concerns or struggles, how do you assist them and guide them in trying to overcome those challenges? Question 9 is asking the caregiver to provide information on the child's special interests and activities, such as participation in sports or music lessons, how often they participate, any talents, interests, hobbies. I would say one of the common things I see here is basic unsupported declarations. The child loves something like music or outdoors or whatever. You want to provide a few sentences of context to help us understand why you say that. Do they start dancing and or clapping whenever they hear music? Light up, laugh, and giggle. Maybe they say, I love music, or tell Alexa, Alexa, please play such and such song over and over again. Give examples so the reader doesn't have to just take your word for it, but they can see how you come to that conclusion objectively, which again helps you build your credibility and helps give weight to the information you're providing. Question 10 operates as a catch-all. This is where you can provide any additional information that you believe the court should know about the child, such as behavioral information, services the child is receiving if those weren't mentioned in number 4, or additional details not provided in number 4. Your recommendations for additional services that are needed, or any other concerns that weren't addressed in the items above. You don't need to only include negative information. I'm giving general descriptions about the child. The child is a generally happy kiddo who's very social and likes to engage with the community around them. Document all contacts with the child's attorney. You can keep a log documenting the frequency of the visits. And if you've had any trouble regarding visits or contact with the child's attorney, you can note that here as well. I would just encourage you to keep in mind that all parties receive a copy of your completed 290 form. So it's really helpful to be factual and respectful even when reporting a problem. For question 11, in my experience, this section really throws off caregivers who will either leave it blank out of fear or confusion, or go too far in the other direction. For example, telling the court, we need to terminate rights and order the child adopted by them right now. So I always recommend completing this item with measured language that communicates the important information to the court, but also can demonstrate your understanding that there is a court process and procedure here that does need to be followed in all the cases. And what you actually write in this section may vary depending on the facts, but for most 290s, some form of standard language can work well. So I would recommend saying something like, we respectfully recommend maintaining child's name, Amanda's current placement, routine, services if applicable, and relationships to support Amanda's interest in continuity and stability. And if Amanda's unable to reunify for any reason, we're committed to providing permanency for Amanda through adoption. This type of statement is child-centered. It's stating your recommendations as focused on the child's interests, demonstrates an understanding of process and roles, and it doesn't undermine reunification. It communicates your commitment to permanency, assuming that's the case, which is important for concurrent planning purposes, but can get tricky because you do want to make sure that you are not appearing as though you don't support any reunification efforts that may be ongoing at that time. And finally, for question 12, if you have attachments like a visitation log or more information, medical reports, for example, be sure to check the box next to question 12 and indicate the total number of pages attached. There's not enough room on the form itself, so it's very likely that you are going to need an attachment, at least for question 7, often for question 4 as well. So any supporting documentation that you may want to include from providers, such as doctors or therapists, or anyone else is counted in this attachment page count for number 12. And of course, you do need to sign a date on the bottom of page 2. If there are two resource parents, both should be noted on page 1 and on the signature page. And you just want to make sure to label each attachment by the attachment number to the 290. So like I was saying, it's likely that you will not be able to fit all of your information on the form. This is an example heading format for your attachment of overflow. If you need more space in the small space provided in the actual form, you can either write continued on attachment 1 for each section that needs more space. For multiple item overflow, that can all go on the same attachment. You don't need a new attachment for each new item number on the form that where you have overflow. You do need to distinguish which section you are continuing by using a heading with the question number and a title of that section. And you need to reference this attachment on the form itself. So you can see the example format on the slide, attachment 1 to the 290, child's name, first and last, and the child's date of birth, case number. And here is an example where you would need overflow of 4 and 7, current status of the child's medical, dental, general, physical, emotional, continued, or you can write the whole response just on the attachment, etc. as needed. We always encourage caregivers to reach out to medical providers to advocate for the child's mental and physical health. You want to attach letters from credentialed treating providers who can support what you're reporting on the form. It adds that credibility, and it also conveys that you have these established relationships with the child's provider, that you can supervise and facilitate continuity of care, which supports a child receiving the treatment that they need. I should note that we have a sample request for medical services letter to for treating physicians and mental health care professionals. It's not on our website, but you can contact us if you think that would be helpful. Providers can edit it as they see fit, or it can be helpful for them just to have an understanding of what they can provide. So please do give us a call if you think that's something that would be helpful to one of your providers so they can provide support for the child's needs. Behavioral indicators of stress. This list was actually created by a child abuse pediatrician and associate program director at the Violence Intervention Hub Clinic in LA. It notes specific behaviors that can indicate child stress responses related to transition, trauma, neglect, and things that may signal that the child needs an updated mental health evaluation on that basis. You can use this list to open the conversation with the healthcare providers and provide helpful information that may lead to a recommendation for ongoing treatment or referrals, or provide a basis for a provider letter of support. Just two really important things to always keep in mind with the 290. It should be child-centered and factual. Child-centered means it's not focusing on issues with the county. It's not focusing on the birth parents or what you've heard about the parents or extended family. You really just need to keep it focused on the child. And part of this is because you're building that relationship and credibility with the court. The information really needs to be factual. Facts include things that you have personally witnessed or independently observed or verified. This is not always easy to do, especially in such an emotionally charged environment. There's a lot of second and third hand information that gets passed on to caregivers from social workers, birth parents, extended family, etc. So if it's not something that you know to be true, most of the time you should probably not include it. But if the information is critical and is not, cannot, or will not be shared by the source, then you need to qualify the information as it is your understanding that, or you have been informed by so-and-so that XYZ. You aren't sure, if you aren't sure whether it is something you should or shouldn't include, please give us a call. We can assess it with you and provide advice and our reasons, or provide options and the reasons behind those options. And ultimately you can decide, because it is your paperwork, what to include or not include. And then the last thing just about the 290, you can also choose to attach a picture or two so the judge can see, they can put a face to the name and the file number. And if you remember nothing else, just try to keep in mind that when you're completing the 290 caregiver information form, you want to be sure to be factual, provide specific information, remain child-centered, positive, and as kind as you can. With the more sensitive information you're including, staying factual is really going to help be able to relay that information without looking like you're pointing fingers or coming for anyone inappropriately, that you're just trying to relay information as it's related to the child. So you want to remember, think balance, and keep in mind that all parties, birth parents, the county, everyone will see your 290. So if there's something in there that you think might create some conflict, we can think about how we could reframe it or work with the language so that it's not coming across in a negative way, but more in a collaborative tone. So timely professional filing. What this means is that the law or Calvin Rules of Court have established the time frame for filing this JB 290. You might recall that I said previously the JB 285 relative information form can be filed at any time in a case. The 290 is intended to be filed before each review hearing when the court is going to be looking at the case. So the rules state that it should be filed at least 5 calendar days before the hearing if filing in person, 7 if by mail. We do generally tell people get it in 2 weeks before, just to give a little bit of a buffer. You don't want to go too much before that time period, because if it's filed too early before the court's looking at the case, it's likely just to be put in the file and may not be read at the time the court itself is looking at the case or making decisions for the child in the case. And then the other thing that's important to know is that when the 290 is received, whether filed in person or by mail, the clerk has the responsibility of getting it filed and providing it to all the necessary parties.